Today we'll be talking about Chapter 10, Section 3, and the big idea here is that we need to be informed as the electorate. We are the electorate, the people who vote or not vote for these individuals. And so we need to learn how that process works. So a few that I'm going to throw at you today. Number one, propaganda, political action committee, soft money, which is really tricky to understand, but we'll get to it, and then incumbent. So before we start, let's think about this question. Should a government limit campaign spending? Or even, can limits to campaign spending interfere with a candidate's right or a citizen's right even to free speech? So the steps in running for public office. Let's say that one of you want to go into public office. You hear the spiel from our General Assembly representative and you say, I can do a better job than that guy. Well, do it. Run against him. Why not? So you want to run for office. Congratulations. It's a mature step that I think you should all consider at some point. Well, good luck. You can start a Facebook campaign. It may go viral. But if you really want to get this going, you're going to need to hire a consultant. Someone who does this for a living with some experience. Well, guess what? Good consultants cost good money. And money plays a big role in the process of getting elected. The bigger the campaign, the more money you're going to need to pull it off. The purpose of these campaigns are to convince the public to vote for a particular candidate. And you may say, I can do this without money. Congratulations. Go around and individually meet the thousands of people that you will need to convince, assuming they even give you the time of day. Oh, don't worry, I'll use social media. Congratulations. Do you ever read the comments on social media? I don't think they're often very rational. People will hear you, but if you really want your voice to be heard, then you're going to need some money behind it. The purpose of these campaigns, obviously, are to convince the public to vote for a particular candidate. And this part of their job consumes politicians because it takes up so much of their time. How are they going to do it? Well, number one, they need to find out what the public opinion is. How do people feel about these particular issues? If you find, it's just like doing market research if you're going to open up a new business. If you find that there is a need, that the public desires something that they don't have, and that a large enough majority of the public really want this thing, that might be an issue you could run on. Secondly, endorsements as propaganda. I just want to define this term for you. Propaganda is a certain idea or message that may involve misleading messages that are designed to manipulate. It's a sales tactic to make yourself sound better than you actually are. Propaganda is a powerful tool in elections. One of the masters of this was Joseph McCarthy. He began accusing all manner of people of being communist, and he used that fear to win elections until finally he was disgraced because he just took it too far. Great example of propaganda. Secondly, the one we're most familiar with are advertisements. Advertisements to create just the right image for a candidate, but also to create a negative image for our opponent. But here's the thing, whether you're using social media or you're going door to door or you're making big speeches or even television commercials, no matter what medium you choose to use, to reach a large number of people is going to require a large amount of money. And so that leads us to, where does the money come from? The bigger the election, the higher level of spending. Every election tends to get more expensive because to reach the larger audiences are going to require a greater degree of spending. Many campaigns use propaganda. You've been exposed to it as a daily part of your lives. Again, whether you watch television, read the newspaper, consume social media, whatever outlet that you use to connect to the outside world has often connected you with political candidates who have often tried to influence your opinion. So what does a candidate do with their time? In addition to going around and speaking with people and hearing their concerns, in addition to the time they spend reading bills and deciding on them when Congress is in session or when a president is doing the work of a president in the White House, they also spend a considerable amount of their time soliciting donations or raising campaign funds. Laws and even court decisions like the Citizens United Supreme Court case have established various rules for how political campaigns can be financed. For example, the Federal Election Campaign Act, called FECA, was passed in 1971. It requires that the money that a candidate spends be disclosed for public knowledge. And so you can look it up. For each person that is going to come in and meet with us, you can look up how much money did Congressman Meadows spend in his recent campaign for re-election. You have a right to know that. This law also placed limits to the amount of hard money donated directly to a candidate or a party. Here's the tricky thing. There are limits to how much a person can give directly to a candidate or directly to a party. This is where it gets tricky. That's called hard money. So if you were to be inspired by what the congressman has to say, and you were to pull him aside after the presentation and you were to say, Mr. Congressman, I would like to personally write you a check for $10,000. How does that sound? He would be federally obligated to tell you, I can't accept that much money from the individual. This was an effort to limit campaign spending. But don't worry, Mr. Congressman, there's a workaround. There's a big loophole to this law. But after all, it was an effort to limit campaign spending. And I just wanted to show you this to provide evidence that we've been aware of a problem for quite some time. And we've been trying to work to fix this. Next, the Federal Election Commission was created in 1974 as an amendment to the Federal Election Campaign Act. So it was added to that law, and it was created to administer and enforce all of these laws related to elections. Their purpose is to monitor campaign spending, and that's why you can easily access all of this information. You can probably find it straight from their website. There's also been a number of famous Supreme Court cases related to campaign spending. First is Buckley v. Vallejo. The Supreme Court ruled in 1976 that the government could set limits on campaign contributions, and that the government could not limit the spending of a candidate's own money. So there have been a few candidates historically that have pledged to use only their own money in their campaigns. Ross Perot is probably the most famous of these. So government, once more, could set limits on campaign contributions, but could not limit the amount of an individual's personal money. There is a public fund that can be used for elections. It's called the Presidential Election Campaign Fund. It was created to establish a public funding source for presidential elections. The money comes each year as part of your taxes. The idea is that our government was hoping to level the playing field when it came to presidential elections. If each candidate gets the same amount of public funding, then money shouldn't be as big of an issue in national elections, theoretically. In fact, even third-party candidates could qualify for funding through the Presidential Election Campaign Fund. But the real question is, if $1 billion is being spent by each candidate, where is that $1 billion coming from? So private funding comes from various sources. It could be individual citizens. It could be one of you pull Mark Meadows aside and he can accept a certain degree of money directly from you. So individual citizens, possibly. Could be from corporations, which again, according to Citizens United, corporations in terms of campaign finance are legally considered people and can donate to political action committees with no restraint. Could be from labor unions, which once more can donate to these types of committees. Interest groups, again, maybe it's something you're passionate about, like the environment or like crime and public safety or healthcare, whatever it is. There's a political action group that is working towards that end that you can support financially. And the big one, of course, political action committees. What are these? Well, a political action committee is a political organization established possibly by a corporation, maybe a labor union, or maybe one of these special interest groups. And its purpose is to support candidates by contributing money. Now, once more, there are limits to how much money they can directly donate to a campaign. The first thing they do is they max that out. But since political action committees can also use soft money, which is something we'll learn about in just a moment, they can get away with spending unlimited amounts of money. Unlimited amounts of money on political campaigns. Okay, so what is soft money? Well, soft money are donations given to political parties that are not designed for a particular candidate's election campaign. So if I want to donate $10 billion to the Republican Party, then perhaps. There's a couple of caveats. This soft money cannot come from individuals or super PACs. But there are no limits to these types of contributions. No limits. Okay, so where's the money going? It may be spent by interest groups in the media. Again, that's those television commercials you see, paid for by XPAC, paid for by this political action committee. Now, often this money is given by political action committees to incumbents. An incumbent is a politician who has already been elected to office. So Congressman Meadows has already been elected. He's an incumbent. Congressman or General Assembly Representative Henson has already been elected. Therefore, these are incumbents. They are your current representatives. And this money can be given to them by a political action committee. And that means they're probably going to have a lot more money than whoever is going to challenge them. And that makes getting rid of those people rather difficult. Well, in 2002, the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, known as the McCain-Feingold Act, was passed. And it set limits on who could raise money. It even set time restrictions on televised campaign ads. New limits on hard money contributions, that is, contributions directly to the candidate. So limits on soft money, that is money to the party. Limits on hard money, that is directly to the candidate. This was challenged at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court upheld the ruling. But of course, the use of social media has provided a whole new platform for campaigning. Even memes. I mean, how many political memes have you seen? Maybe you don't have the attention to watch a commercial, but you're going to binge out on some silly memes. Guess what? A lot of those memes are bought and paid for by professionals. Be a sweet career, right? Even think of articles online. You know, these days, if you Google something, like Google is so-and-so dumb, often the first articles that are going to appear are going to be written by professionals who do this for a living, and many of those articles are biased, meant to persuade you to feel a certain way about an issue. Great examples: BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, even The Onion, the stupid satire publication, is a form of these types of media created to influence. And of course, videos. Last question: do you think that the McCain-Feingold Act will make it more difficult and once more research that Citizens United to find out more information about the effect of the Supreme Court case that ruled that corporations are people and how that influences campaign spending?